worked undercover for 14 years, says former elder pioneer Lassie Stromqvist. This is Lassie Stromqvist. He's one of our latest heroes from Norway. He's been working, he's been working undercover for 14 years. 14 years as an undercover, pretending to go to these meetings. And what would you do if you were undercover? Now, I hadn't thought of that. For me, I just sent everyone an email and said I quit. But I never thought of going undercover. I think there's something we can all learn here as apostates. That's why I'm running this video. I think this is an excellent story from Lassie. He's from Norway. He just exposed himself less than a year ago with his face and everything. He said, look, I've had enough of being undercover. I'm going. And he was on the trial in Norway. He took the platform, gave his story, wrote the attorney, the lawyers a letter, told him his story. We ran that video. So Lassie, good work. We love you, man. I hope this gets out to the whole world. We're trying to reach 100,000 subscribers. Well, you might as well shoot big, right? We're at almost at 8,000. But really, to get these channels to perform, you need 100,000. You do. We're not hitting the tip of the iceberg with people. And when I look at my stats, maybe 40% of you guys actually subscribe that watch these videos. And I get it. A lot of you guys are Pimo or and you're hiding your identity. I get that. So, but it doesn't help push the channel out. And that's what subscriptions do. YouTube is funny that way. That's how it works. We can't change it. You can go out and buy subscriptions, but I'm not going to do that. I don't have the money to waste on that, and it's fake anyways. It doesn't really help you. So anyways, let's get into this article. This is a good article. And by the way, if you go into our descriptions below, we have an online community called Discord. There's therapy sessions every Sunday morning. Lucy runs that, and Ruby's on there all the time. She's always bringing up games. There's a movie night. She's got movie night booked up until April, I heard. And you can play poker, and there's all kinds of things to do that you can learn a lot. There's different categories. You want to learn about politics, you want to learn about the Bible. You can go on to each of the sections, and you can talk to people. Real people like you and me that have questions, and we're all confused a bit. So we're going to get into this story here. Undercover for, let's look at the thumbnail. I worked undercover for 14 years. And I got this email at 3:05 this morning. And Lassie says, thanks for your videos. He says, I have a very interesting life story. It's exciting. It's interesting. He says how I worked undercover, inactive, in 14 years, and also shows what others can also do. So he says, you're free to use my story. So anybody out there that wants to use this story, share it, subscribe, share it, like it, and get these stories out. This is right from Norway. This is what's so interesting about this. It's timely. We see all this stuff happening in Norway. And yet, while all this stuff was happening in Norway, here Lassie was, since 2021, working undercover. And then, of course, for this final appeal, he exposed himself and he went onto the stand on trial. So really excellent story. This is something you'll take with you to your grave. You'll be so happy that you did all of this in your life. So let's read this. This is really interesting. My life story is an undercover inactive Pimo for 14 years. And the exciting things that happened. Comment if you want and feel free to share. So I'm going to post this Reddit story for you guys to look at on Reddit. And he says about a little about 14 years that I was an inactive Jehovah's Witness. How I couldn't just passively sit still and do nothing. Just sitting there meeting after meeting. So he says, this is something that became a healing process for me. How could I repair myself to move forward? What happened and what did I do? Well, this is what happened during my undercover situation as an inactive. The 14 to 15 years that I was a Pimo before I officially came out last summer, I thought, how can I correct all the lies that I've told people from house to house in all these years that I was busy in full-time service as a pioneer? And how could I repair my bad conscience for these things? And that is a thing, we get out, we wake up, and wow, I've confused a lot of people out there. And so a lot of us start channels, write blogs, if you're a good writer. Lassie's certainly a good writer. He says, I thought to myself, I have to do something about this. What can I do? And then the thought occurred to me, why not warn about Jehovah's Witnesses in the same way from house to house? I still had a list on the magazine racks where I delivered magazines. I had a lot of nice people and return visits that time, and I found out all the lists and leaflets on the return visits and studies I had. I started strategically with the last congregation I attended. Then I found out that there were over 80 people I could visit. Now the message was to tell them about the truth behind the truth. So I eagerly set to work. At that time, 14 years ago, YouTube was little used to make videos against Jehovah's Witnesses. And if I had done that, I would have quickly been disfellowshipped for apostasy, so I had to do this undercover. And how should I introduce myself? Well, I made an introduction that went like this. And so this is what he said. He says, hi, I don't know if you remember me, but I was here at as a former Jehovah's Witness, and I visited you to deliver you the magazines. And I just wanted to apologize and tell you I have been completely brainwashed. And I have said things that were based on lies and untruths. And if you have 5 minutes, I can tell you how I was indoctrinated so that you should never be interested in becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses, as it will completely ruin your life. Imagine that, you're a householder, and these Jehovah's Witnesses are visiting you. Maybe you're even studying a bit, thinking of becoming one of them, or maybe thinking of going to that memorial. That's a big thing. And here this guy comes back and says it'll ruin your life. Well, I would be all ears. Well, this is what happened. He says, to my great surprise, I was invited into the homes of most of the people. Yeah, that's how you get an invitation in. I thought this was great. He was invited in. And he said he'd been using a magazine route and the return visits with, so he got invited in. He's calling on all these return visits. And he says, I told them a lot and warned them not to accept visits from Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. I always started with a question, and when I came into them, and it was the following. He says, imagine this situation as Jehovah's Witnesses ring your doorbell and say the following. We have some important information for you and your household. Will you not accept a Bible study and baptize yourself as a Jehovah's Witness as soon as possible? You will be killed at Armageddon, which will come very soon. Should you become a Jehovah's Witness, you may experience many frightening challenges. You must be willing to and not accept a blood transfusion if you need it, but be willing to die. But fortunately, you can have a resurrection. And if you celebrate Christmas or birthdays, you'll also be disfellowshipped. And should you become a Jehovah's Witness and then be disfellowshipped, you will lose all contact with your family who are Jehovah's Witnesses. So, do you want to have a Bible study and become a Jehovah's Witness? I would say all people would say no. We didn't know this was what this religion was about. People would be an eye-opener, because Jehovah's Witnesses don't tell you the truth. They don't tell you that this is the way it is. Once you get into that cult, you're trapped. And he goes on to say, of course, everyone said no if a Jehovah's Witness had said this in the first visit to them. And I then told them that Jehovah's Witnesses always avoid telling this, and I have done the same thing, avoid telling the truth. And it turned out that many of those I visited were still having visits from other Jehovah's Witnesses. A few were even starting a Bible study and had also accepted the invitation to the memorial and had been there before. And after I told them the real truth behind the truth, they all cut off contact with Jehovah's Witnesses. Good work, Lassie. Good work. So he says, I made a document that everyone I visited received, which I called the monkey experiment, which explains the indoctrination process of how one is indoctrinated and what happens. It's on Reddit. So I'm going to run a separate video on this monkey experiment. It's so interesting. We have to get that out there. It's the first time I've seen it. So he says, this is something I did for several years as an inactive Jehovah's Witness. I don't know how the exact number of people I visited over the years and maybe saved, but it's hundreds. I am incredibly glad I did this. This was in a way a repair phase for me, where I mentally helped myself to move forward in life. So my call to all Pimos and excluded ones, if you only had a few return visits, seek them out and tell them the truth behind the truth. Maybe you can save someone too. Because there is something that is incredibly important to think about, and that is the following. There are usually only two groups we can help, those who are on their way into Jehovah's Witnesses and those who are on their way out. We cannot save the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses because they have chosen to figuratively take out their brains and replace them with a brain prosthesis filled with doctrines and shaped conscience. So it's like a prosthetic leg. You know, you have a plastic leg or something. Well, they have a plastic brain. It's not a real brain. It's filled with doctrines and shaped. It has a shaped conscience based on indoctrinated guidance from the governing body. Very, very nicely said to think about it like that. He says, remember, the benefits of taking small steps are that they allow us to build momentum and increase our self-confidence because we are mastering along the way. And in addition, it avoids the overwhelming feelings that often come when we set a big goal. Each small step helps us to get closer to achieving the bigger goal. So that's great. Great video. Great article. Lassie. I'll give that comment. And that's good. Okay. So that's the end of this article. It's it's a short one, but I'm going to do another video right after this one called The Monkey Experiment. You got to watch it as well. So thanks a lot, Lassie. Thanks for this article, what you did, how you became undercover JW for all those years. It's a lot of years. 14 years, 15 years, you said. But you have a lot more power working as an undercover Pimo if you're in there. And, maybe you have family in there. Like in this case, Lassie's a pioneer. So maybe he had to go out pioneering. I used to go pioneering and my family wouldn't come with me because they weren't pioneers. I'd go out alone a lot of times just to get my time in. I liked working alone. It was just me and the person at the door. They didn't feel ganged up on when I was alone. I don't know if they allow that still, but when I was in it back in 2012, I used to work alone in the afternoons. I'd work with the group in the morning. You'd go out to the service arrangement, work with the group, and then in the afternoon I'd do return visits and stuff. And sometimes people would tag along, but most people didn't go out all day. They weren't pioneers. They didn't need the time. Some other pioneers, they were on their way to studies. Everyone had things lined up, so I'd go out alone. And I had some of my best calls alone. Now, if I was going to redo it, I would work as a Pimo. If I fully woke up inside, got the knowledge that I have now, I could work undercover and go out in the afternoons and help people to stay away from the cult, get them out of the cult. And that's something that we can all do as undercovers. So thanks again, and remember, keep living your life with love, folks. This really works. It's what Jesus taught, and that's what we repeat on every video. So thanks again, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.